Michael, and thank you, cherry growers, for letting me have a chance to speak today on the preliminary findings of the vulnerability assessment New South Wales DPI have undertaken on not only the cherry industry, but a range of different industries. So my name is Jess Fearnley, and I'm a development officer for the New South Wales Department in temperate fruits, but more specialising in cherries at the moment. So today I just wanted to talk about the vulnerability assessment and the key objectives and principles of the project, and then moving into some of the findings that we've had with the cherry industry and where we're hoping to go to in the future with this work. So the vulnerability assessment is a large project, so it's got a large bucket of money, $8 million attributed to it, and it sits under the Climate Change Research Strategy Program. And so the aim of this project is to improve the understanding of the climate change risks and impacts to primary industries in New South Wales. And then once we've understood the risks and impacts and what we think is going to happen, how can we adapt to these and reduce the impact that this has on our industries? And so we're doing this by having a consistent approach across all of our industries that we're looking at. And we're having a huge statewide focus. So we're not only focusing just on one growing region, orange per se for cherries, we're focusing on the whole state. And this is enabling growers to use this information to see how suitable their current growing region is, and maybe looking at other areas that could be opportunities for expansion of their orchards, or investing in the current region which is most suitable for this, for a changing environment in cherries. So we think it's really valuable having that statewide approach. We're hoping that the data that we've generated from this project will be able to be used in industry planning. So now that we know what's going to happen in the future, how do we plan for these changes? And then also hoping that this will inform policy, particularly around that water space. So if we know what's going to happen to the climate and we know what's going to happen to water demand, how can we inform policy and change these policies for us? And throughout the whole process, we're capturing DPI expertise and external expertise through that collaboration. So I think there's about 72 DPI employees working on this project. And then there's also a wide range of externals that we've had contribute and offer expertise throughout the process. So the project is set up under 6 different nodes, and the cherry industry sits under the horticulture and viticulture node that we've created. And each of these industries will have a multi-criteria analysis, which is looking at how the changing climate impacts yield and quality. And so for cherries, we designed a specific model that looks at climatic inputs and how they affect the yield and quality of our cherries. So to assess this impact, we looked at the exposure. So what are the current climate conditions that contribute to growing cherries? So is it heat, rain, frost events, and what are they doing to our cherry tree? And then the other component of it is sensitivity. So how sensitive is our cherry tree to those exposures? Is it the hot temperatures that are making the fruit soft? Is it the cold temperatures of the frost making flowers abort or reducing bee activity? What is the sensitivity of our industry? And that's what we're classifying as the potential impact. So the potential impact of the climate on the cherry tree. So that's stage 1, which we've just completed. And now we're moving into the adaptive capacity. So we know the impact on the industry. How are we going to adapt? And we think this is going to be the most valuable component of the project for growers, because everyone can be told what's going to happen in the future, but then those tools to say, here's what's going to happen and here's the solution to it. So I'm really excited for the next stage of the project. So I went away when I was told to do this multi-criteria analysis, or MCA, and I went and saw some valuable opinions from my 6 focus group members. So I'm just one person, the cherry industry is huge, and so I really needed a hand, and I was able to get help off Kevin Dodds from New South Wales DPI, Dr. Sally Bound, Professor Dougal Close from University of Tasmania, Charlotte Brunt from Cherry Growers, Mark Chapman and Simon Regret who are growers down in Victoria. So I went to this focus group and I said, we need to understand how a cherry tree grows and what are the climatic variables that you guys think impact on production. So we decided to use Lapin cherries as our focus crop because this crop is the most commonly grown in New South Wales. And then we split the cherry growing season down into 6 different what we call phenophases. And this is what a cherry grows through its growth cycle. So we've got post-harvest, so when bud initiation is occurring. We've got dormancy, bud swell, flowering, cell division, and cell expansion. And then we also had a separate component, which was harvest, which was more about quality, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We then attributed dates to each of these phenophases, which we decided would occur usually in New South Wales. So these dates are roughly around Lapin's cherry would go through this cycle in New South Wales. And then we talked about what component of this growth cycle is the most important to yield. And what the focus group decided was that flowering is the most important cycle that the cherry goes through during its growth phase. And we can see that that we've given that a weighting. So the W's equal weighting. So we've given flowering a weighting of 0.39. All right, this is probably very overwhelming, but I'll delve into it a little bit deeper. Under each of the phenophase, we attributed climatic variables that impact on that phenophase. So if we go down to cell division, you've got the weighting of cell division, which is 0.11, so 11% of the model is attributed to cell division. And then underneath, in these light blue boxes, we've got the climatic variables. So minimum temperatures, average temperatures, and maximum temperatures. And this is what we think impact cell division at this time. Underneath in the white boxes, we've got the actual temperature thresholds that we believe make up maximum temperatures. So on the right-hand side here under Tmax, we've got temperatures below 30 degrees we believe are optimal for cell division. And then as you get warmer and warmer, the suitability or the rating is what the R, so the little number underneath this box, the rating is decreased. So the effect on yield is more, therefore less suitable. So we've done this for all the models of, all the phenophases of the model. And so that's why we get that giant spidery looking arm, is that we've got a lot of different climatic variables happening. And so we ran this model in the New South Wales cherry growing region, but we were able to capture a little bit of Victoria as well, that northwest component of Victoria. We ran the model and focused on 3 specific growing regions in New South Wales, so Orange, Young and Hillston. But then we also looked at Condobolin, Bega and Burke as test sites. And so what this was doing was, we know we don't grow cherries in Burke, but if our model comes out and says it's really suitable to grow cherries in Burke, we know that our model is not very accurate. So that was a really good way of testing to see if we were doing the right thing. And then we were assuming with this model that we had adequate water through the whole model. We were using best practice management. We were pest and disease free, and we understood that the model couldn't account for extreme events such as hail, wind, and heat waves. But we do realise that a hail damaged crop you can be wiped out completely from a hail damaged crop, so that year might be very unsuitable for growing cherries. So we do understand that, but unfortunately the model is a little bit limited in that area. And so the model goes away, it runs through this MCA and it spits out these climate maps. And so on the left-hand side, we've got our historical data. So this is historically the suitability of cherries. And then as we move to the right-hand side, we've got what the future looks like. So how suitable our cherry industry in these growing regions are going to be based on our model. And then we've also got how confident we are, so the uncertainty of these changes, and if that change is positive or negative. So are our regions becoming more suitable for growing cherries, or are they becoming less suitable? So we've got the 2 climate projection models here of RCP 4.5, which is the low emission scenario. So if we clean up all our greenhouse gases and we put in some really good climate change adaptations, that will hit. And then the 8.5 down below is high emissions. So business as usual, we don't change anything. That's what we're tracking towards. So I'll just zoom in a little bit closer so you guys could get a little bit more of an understanding of what I'm talking about here. So historically, you can see we've got the yellow, which indicates very suitable. So highly suitable area for growing cherries based on our model. Down below, the dark blue colours is not suitable at all. So as you can see in our historical map, most of New South Wales is suitable for growing cherries. However, down on the alpine regions, it's dark blue, so therefore not suitable. And up on the Northern Rivers region, it's probably too hot or too humid, so it's not suitable either. Our most suitable areas are around Orange and Mudgee and out towards down into that northern west Victoria region. If we move to our future climate projection, which is what we believe will happen in the future, you can see that dark blue is encroaching way down that northwest of New South Wales. So if we were going to grow cherries in Bourke, we won't be doing it in the future because it's highly unsuitable. You can see the growing regions of orange is actually becoming more suitable for growing cherries. So that's really exciting for the growers that I work with because we're seeing more suitable conditions around cherry growing. The green, so a 0.8 suitability, so not optimal suitability, but still suitable for growing cherries, is encroaching down into that northwest of Victoria, but we're still seeing quite yellow suitability, so good suitability across the top half of Victoria there. So we have these maps that have been generated for each different phenophase of our model. So as you can see, we've got one for dormancy and flowering. And I might just run you through the flowering model and how we generated that. So we decided in the focus group that there were 4 different climatic variables that influenced cherry production in flowering. The first one was what we're titling frost bombs. So these are extreme frosts, which don't happen every season, but they might happen once every 10 to 20 years. So these temperatures are very rarely reached, but when they are reached, they cause catastrophic effects on the crop. So if you're getting a -7 at flowering, you can expect to see a heavy reduction in yield. And that's what we're trying to capture in the model there. As we move to the minimum temperatures, so temperatures just above -2, what we're calling mild frosts, and we've tried to capture those in days spent with mild frost. So how many days did you get that mild frost? Because we know that cherry flowers come out at all different times. But if you're spending above 8 days with mild frost, then you can expect to see a reduction in yield. The T mean, so average temperatures and rainfall, is more about bee activity. So I'd love to chat to Jeff about how bee activity does change when it gets cooler and warmer. But from the literature, we saw that bees love 16 to 19 degrees is their optimal temperature. And as you get cooler and warmer, you start to see a reduction in their activity. Therefore, we can account that for a reduction in yield because you're not going to have as much pollination. Similarly with rain, the more days you have that are raining, the less likely you are to have bees visiting flowers and therefore a reduction in pollination. And so flowering produced these suitability maps. So historically, you could see that the cooler temperatures along the Great Dividing Range reduce the suitability of orange and young due to frost risks and unsuitable temperatures for bees. So again, that yellow colour means 100% suitability. So you can see most of New South Wales and that top half of Victoria is highly suitable for flowering conditions. Into the future, we can see an increase in suitability in orange and young, which is fantastic, and that's associated with the reduction in frost events expected in the future. So we're seeing our New South Wales growing regions becoming more suitable over that flowering period, which is really exciting. So as I said, there are so many maps that we've pulled out from this project. Although this is just our preliminary data, we are trying to finalise our maps and we will produce them and send them out to growers so you'll be able to use these. But our initial interpretations of our model was that we know that chill portions are going to become more difficult to achieve. And I know that I'm probably not saying anything new here, because as we get warmer, chill is going to become harder and harder to accumulate. Cool temperatures at flowering can reduce bee activity and flower viability, and that's what we were seeing in orange and young. Historically, we aren't as suitable in these periods of time because we are getting those frosts, but as we move to a warmer climate, these frosts are becoming less apparent. And high temperatures will continue to impact fruit quality. So those warm, hot temperatures over post-harvest periods are going to continue to impact on our fruit firmness. So the future work of the project, which I'm really excited to get my teeth into, we're trying to develop a water demand modelling. So how much water is a cherry tree going to utilise in the future? And are we going to have that water? What's our rainfall patterns going to look like? Fruit quality, we did a separate model for fruit quality because we are trying to capture those events outside of general temperatures and rain. So we really want to be able to provide that for the cherry industry, considering quality makes up such a large component of our market. We will integrate with the biosecurity MCA, so particularly Queensland fruit fly. And from the webinar yesterday, it was really interesting to hear about the different movements of medfly and Q-fly within South Australia. So we might be able to see what the temperatures and what the climate's going to do to our fruit fly where it's present along that east coast, and if it is going to move and change. So that'd be really interesting to see. And then adaptation. We know what's going to happen. Chill accumulations becoming more and more difficult to achieve. What are our low chill variety options? How are we going to adapt to this climate? So I just really want to thank my focus group members for helping me along with this. They've all contributed lots of valuable time and advice. And then the vulnerability assessment team, which is the team behind me, who've developed code and the Cherry MCA development and the quality analysis as well. And a big shout out to Jade Kelly as well, who's online at the moment. She's done an amazing work with me on getting all of this all together. So thank you. Just a quick note that the Climate Change and Primary Industries website has launched, and so these maps, as well as the commodities that I haven't spoken about today, will also be available. So we've got 42 different commodities that we've looked at as part of this project. So if you're interested in others, please jump online, and this is where my suitability maps will be published as well. So you'll be able to really hone in on the different phenophases that you're interested in. And if you're interested in maybe your own state, we might be able to look at funding provided, looking at South Australia, Western Australia and Tasmania for those suitability maps as well. But feel free to get in touch, and thank you for having me.
Thanks, Jess. That was really interesting. I mean, some of those key temperatures, wearing my proud Tasmanian hat, I have to go, wow, our maximum temperatures barely scrape over those thresholds, particularly around pollination time. So, oh God, sometimes got to wonder, maybe bring on global warming. Did you guys, maybe I missed it in there, but did you guys factor in rainfall frequency into some of those key dates?
Yeah, so rainfall's really difficult to be able to model. And that's what we were trying to capture with, we really wanted to do like a cherry cracking scenario. The only thing that we could get was that bee activity, that rain day. So how many days we would expect to see over, I think we did the threshold as 5 mils or something like that. So historically, how many days were spent over 5 mils? Unfortunately, we can't predict what the exact rainfall we're going to get in the future. We might be able to predict when rain might fall, but yeah, we couldn't get accurate rainfall data into the model. So yeah, a bit of a restriction there.
Oh, totally. I mean, even when we look at the forecast, we can never guess from 7 days out whether it's going to rain or not.
Can't guess an hour out.
So, are there any questions for Jess? What about some of our growers from orange or young? Does this this trend of weather getting more conducive sort of tally with what you guys have been seeing over the last 10, 20 years? Daniel Batnick. Batnicks are in New South Wales. Does it sort of line up with what you guys have been thinking? I should probably unmute him.
Sorry, yes, it certainly does look close to that, yes.
Excellent. Do we still have Hugh?
Yeah, I'm here.
What about yourself, Hugh? Does this sort of match the reality you guys have been living with, and is it perhaps cause for optimism?
Oh, I think it's very valuable work that's being done myself. It looks fantastic, just puts a bit of science behind the assumptions.
Yeah, and I know this was just focused on New South Wales, but if you are interested in your own state, we can talk about running this model. And with this adaptation phase, I know it's a good story for areas like Orange and Young. We seem to be getting more suitable as the time goes on, but areas like Hillston and the Sydney Basin, it's becoming more and more difficult to grow cherries. So I'm interested to hear if any growers are on the line about adaptation strategies or things that you're already doing in your orchard that we might be able to help get some more research behind, or if you've got an idea, really keen to hear from you. And the same with Victorian growers. If you are already experiencing things, please get in touch, because the more people we have contributing to this model, the better it's going to be and the more accurate it's going to be. We're really struggling at the moment to find water demand models, particularly for New South Wales growers. So if anyone out there has an idea of how much water they will typically use in a typical growing season. Now, a typical growing season, I'm not sure if that even exists. But yeah, if you have those values and you're willing to share, we're really keen to hear about it, because the data is just not out there. There has been no very limited research into climate change in the cherry industry. So yeah, we've got to use what you guys have got on the ground, and yeah, that's what's going to fuel our model.
So Jess, one quick question. What sort of resolution do the maps go into?
I'm not particularly sure. Jane, are you still online? Jane Kelly is, she's part of
I'm still here.
Yes, perfect, Jane. Do you know what resolution we have?
Sorry, I just disappeared myself there for a second. The resolution we're going to get down to is about a 25K grid is the lowest resolution we're going to get down to. We're using what is kind of now a slightly outdated version of climate data. So once we get access to the new set, which is CMIT 6, we will be able to update all those models that we've created, including Jess's, to a higher resolution, which I think is about 5K. So for the time frame, 25Ks, which is not bad. It gives you enough detail, but we don't want to give too much, because we don't want you to and ah about, oh, am I going to be better off than the grower next door or something like that as well. So just enough information, because once we get down to such a small scale, really how accurate can we be between 5K grids about rainfall and things like that when they're pretty sporadic as it is. So yeah, that's the resolution.
Thanks, Jen.
25K. Oh, that'd be huge in Tasmania with our fickle weather. I mean,
Yeah.
I know Tassie has previously done an exercise similar to this. I might just flick it up on the screen. So this is a suitability map run by the Tassie government, where you can drill right in. I think it's got some climate models, and it'll clear up shortly, but helping growers pick pockets to try and deal with things like frost risk, soil aspect, etc. So given that you guys have really done a much more in-depth look at the phenotypes and things, I think certainly from a Tassie perspective, it could be good to update what was probably some fairly crude assumptions back when this work was done.
Yeah, and I mean, we did Lappins, but there is the opportunity to change varieties as well. It's not just leopards. We can adjust as well. So yeah.
For any growers on the line, how much value is there for having different crops? I don't know what your spread of growing, like harvest window is, and whether there is that much difference in rain impact or other weather impact. I know in Tassie, we're kind of like, if you can get the start and you can get the end, it's all kind of the same in the middle. Just pray you don't have rain. I wouldn't have said there are regions that can, say, support Lapins that can't necessarily support Sweetheart or one of the other later ones.